All right, Bruce. It's Big Ten Media Days. It's that time of the year. Talk about some of the storylines to watch for in the season, especially Michigan and all the preseason hype they've garnered, and with Ohio State going into a new era with Ryan Day.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of intrigue there. I mean, Jim Harbaugh made what I think is a really bold move. He brought in Josh Gaddis, who is a unproven, never been a play caller, as his new offensive coordinator. It's also one voice as opposed to some of the stuff Jim Harbaugh would do in the past, where he'd have one guy call the runs and one guy call the pass game. I think what Josh Gaddis has brought, I mean, I did a big story on him for The Athletic. His reputation among the people he worked with has been impeccable. I mean, guys rave about him. And I think the biggest thing he's going to bring is a confidence that, quite honestly, I think was lacking there on that side of the ball. You know, I look at them and say I think they should have arguably as good an offensive line as anybody else. They have a couple of receivers who are really experienced. They're unproven in the backfield with the run game. I know they're optimistic on some of the guys, but you look at the way they finished last year. It was they were in the last two games, and they got blown out of both of them. Against Ohio State and Florida. So I think that's like that. They need a jolt of confidence. I think we'll believe it when we see it vibe from much of the rest of the country, because Jim Harbaugh has not been able to beat the arch rival. So will he finally get that done with Urban Meyer? I think gone. I think that's a big storyline. I think it's a big storyline about Ryan Day taking over for Urban Meyer. I think it helps that he retained a lot of the key pieces of Urban Meyer's run in Ohio State, especially in the off-field capacity with his strength coach, with his recruiting coordinator, and some Larry Johnson, terrific D-line coach. I've heard really good things about Jeff Hafley, who's going to help run the defense that he brought in. So I think those are good steps, but we'll see. I mean, he's leaving behind big shoes because the bar is so high. And then to me, the other storyline that I think a lot of people are very intrigued by is what's going on at Nebraska. Scott Frost had a rough first year, and I think we knew it was going to be rough. Wins 4 games, but I think we saw signs of this thing is starting to awaken. Our crew at Fox, we did the Ohio State game, and the timing of that game was a week after Ohio State had a bye week after getting blown out by Purdue, and Nebraska really went in there toe-to-toe with them and could have easily won that game. I think what you see in Adrian Martinez, the young quarterback there, is the perfect building block for what Scott Frost needs to get done there. He's really talented. He's extremely mature, especially beyond his years. And I think his demeanor is good for really what they're building. I think they're going to take another big step forward.
And the Big Ten is going to be a huge part of the new Big Noon Saturday Fox package, which will essentially counter the SEC and CBS at 3:30 p.m. and then ABC Saturday Night Football, which will be at 7:30 p.m. How big is that for Fox people to kind of go back to the roots? Because back in the day, college football, the big game was at noon, not prime time like it is now.
Yeah, I think that's a cool thing that the company is doing. I think we have, I've just seen a growth in how much better our games have gotten and our selection of games. And I think people will see that, and just last year my crew had done a couple of, I think they were both Ohio State games. One was a Ohio State Nebraska game, one was an Ohio State Indiana game. They were competitive games, but they rated extremely well. And I think when you put in teams that people want to see early in good games, they're gonna tune in, because a lot of times I think people would come out of, they used to watching College Game Day. Maybe they stay for a half hour, an hour of the show. Maybe they stay for all 3. But once they roll into that noon game, it kind of feels like a lull, because usually that noon matchup that ESPN had been putting on has been a little bit underwhelming. So I think it's good. I mean, I can speak a lot on Brady Quinn as a analyst, because I've worked with him the past 3 years, and I know he's got a ton of opinions and he works hard, and I think he'll be a really good addition to Matt and Rob Stone. I think just having seen Reggie Bush being around players at Conference Media Days a couple of days ago in Big 12, I mean, I've never seen a former player draw the kind of awe and wow factor that Reggie does. I mean, it's something. I mean, it's like, guys just, I think he has a kind of connection with a lot of players that is really rare. And so I think it's going to be interesting to watch Reggie, and I think obviously, Urban Meyer with his, national championship pedigree and the perspective he brings, I think it's going to be a really interesting group. I mean, I know from having worked back there, it's a fun place to be, and I think that I'm excited to see what those guys are going to do, and I know our crew that's come in for most of those games, Gus and Joel and Jenny, they do a great job. I mean, I get a chance to watch a lot of their games because they're usually on, different times from when my crew is on, and they do an awesome job. So I think it's been really cool and great to be part of something because we've gotten so much better as a college football organization at Fox Sports just in the last 4 or 5 years. Every year we've gotten better, and I think this year we'll take another big step forward.
All right, thanks for your time, and enjoy working with Joe Davis and Brock Hewitt, which used to be with ESPN. So it's a nice little reunion. So good luck this season.
All right, my pleasure. Thanks.
Wisconsin, right? So I think they need to play strong defense. They need to find a really strong running game with all those new offensive linemen. Obviously, with Jonathan, you would think that they can run the ball well, and then have a quarterback that plays, I hate to say safer, but cleaner football.
Yeah.
That was the biggest issue. Was just I thought that the quarterback didn't play clean football. I don't want to lay it all on his shoulders, but that's what I was talking with Jonathan last night, actually, and we had some time, and I said, "What do you think the difference was?" And he was very candid about saying that he thought that the level of intensity and urgency in the offseason and in practice wasn't nearly the same last year as it was in his freshman year when they went 13-1.
Sure.
And he feels like that intensity and urgency from just the players, I'm not talking about coaches, but an internal, locker room standpoint, has returned more to what his freshman season was. So maybe that's a really good sign. But they don't have to do anything special. Sure. They've got to be Wisconsin, and they should be fine, although their schedule's brutal.
Yeah, very tough this year. So
Nash,
thank you.
What about year 3 for Jeff Brom at Purdue? What are your expectations for the Boilers?
Well, Jeff is an incredible coach. I think he, Matt Campbell, over the same type of time period, have done things with programs that all of us are opening our eyes and like, wow, that's really special to do that. Obviously, last year culminating in kind of beating Ohio State and what happened there. The challenge is for those guys is as you get into year 3 and 4, what you lose your first foundational leadership classes that kind of change the culture. So it goes from changing and building a culture to retaining a culture, which is really difficult. And then not only retaining, but convincing them that we still have to go forward. And that can be hard to do with a program that has had limited success, that finds a little bit of it. One of the biggest human characteristics that all of us have is complacency. And so for me, I know this is not an on-field answer. I honestly believe that Matt Campbell's toughest job, Jeff Brom's toughest job this year is fighting complacency in their program, fighting the we've arrived type of mentality in their program, and trying to continue to strive forward with the same urgency that they had to put them in the position that they're at. And then however they can get the ball to Rondale. I mean, he's a really good player. I think that's what I would stick with.
I was going to say, where do you stack Rondale Moore in when you think about the most dynamic players in college football?
In college football, he's certainly up there. Here's the hard part for Rondale, I think, is that it's a really deep wide receiver year. So people were asking about that in the Big 12, and there's 5 or 6 guys in the Big 12 just in that conference that are outstanding, and I think Moore fits right in there. But C.D. Lamb at Oklahoma is a great player. Tylan Wallace at Oklahoma State. You got Colin Johnson at Texas. It goes on to the Denzel Mims at Baylor. You look in this conference, you got really good wide receivers. You got Laviska Shenault at Colorado, Jerry Jeudy at Alabama. So it's a deep year on the outside, but he is absolutely in the top echelon of players at that position in our sport.
How much fun would you have in Jeff Brom's offense as a quarterback?
Oh gosh, I mean, any number of these offenses these days. My goodness, I'd love to do that. I'd hand.
There are many games that are highlighting your non-conference schedule. On
Yeah.
Fox. There's one in particular you probably like.
Yeah.
Nebraska, Colorado, week 2.
Trust me, I lobbied to call it.
Yeah. What about the significance of having that rivalry back, even though it's
Yep.
only going to be short term?
Yeah, I think it's great for the sport. I know that I believe Oklahoma and Nebraska have scheduled, and so they'll 21 and 22. Colorado and Nebraska will come back even after these two in the home and home. Texas and Texas A&M need to get back and play. Missouri and Kansas need to get back and play. These are foundational things for the health of the sport long term. And the reason I say that is because I know how impactful they are to kids in those regions, right? It's not just for us older college football fans. And I guess I'm an older college football fans, but Colorado and Nebraska built the foundation of why I love this sport from the time I was 5 years old. I think we need more of that. We need more geographic rivalries that play all the time. This is one of the reasons why football is king in Alabama and it's king here in Michigan and Ohio, is because kids go to elementary school and it's like, you got to pick a side. You know, what are you? Are you a Nebraska fan? Are you a Colorado fan? And those rivalries that we've lost in this realignment and chase for money need to come back.
Joel,